Hi everyone, my name is Austin. We certainly had a fun summer, didn't we?
No!
Is it getting hot in here, or is it just me?
How about I rub some suntan lotion on your back?
How about you don't?
I hate clip shows!
I'm so stinking bored!
And my feet are killing me.
Gotta get the -2 he just put down!
Oh, what? Really?
You alright? Very funny, very funny! I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was a fun summer, filled with action, a lot of philosophical elements, and because we tend to put clips into a lot of things, we had plenty of laughs. Yeah, we certainly had a good summer. And now the summer is turning into fall, and now we must progress with the seasons. In fact, throughout the entirety of that summer, I didn't even know that Ace had hired 2 assistant editors to do everything for him while he was off doing other things. Hey, at least someone was doing the editing around here, because I haven't edited a video in over 2 years. It's kind of something you gotta expect with these worlds and whatnot. Excuse me. And so, yeah. And because we spent the entirety of that summer going down the rabbit hole, in fact, I think we went so far down the rabbit hole, we eventually got an Empire Strikes Back poster right there. So why don't we go down the rabbit hole proper, with really the one thing that The Matrix kind of took inspiration from. And that is basically this: Alice in Wonderland. Specifically, I'm talking about the one from 2010. Directed by Tim Burton, and featuring a cast that included Johnny Depp, as well as some additional talents such as Michael Sheen. It features Alan Rickman doing voice work, Christopher Lee, Helena Bonham Carter. It's got a pretty decent cast here. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Based on the classic book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, the plot is something like this. Our titular character, one Alice Kingsley, is a 19-year-old woman grieving the loss of her father and is troubled by common repeating dreams of unusual nature and the stifling expectations of the society that she lives in. Following a rather unneeded marriage proposal by a man named Hamish Ascot at his dear papa's garden party, Alice spots a white rabbit. And well, you know what happens next.
Huh? Eddie! Eddie? My turn!
After falling down the rabbit hole and having the shrinking drink and growing cake, she enters a small door into a magical land called Underland, meeting the white rabbit, a dormouse, a dodo, who thankfully isn't clueless unlike the dodos who adopted Big Bird, talking flowers, obviously looking for other work following the end of Pee-wee's Playhouse, and the identical twins known as Tweedledee and Tweedledum, as opposed to Elliot and Beverly Mantle, who are a different kind of unusual compared to these dudes. Although Alice believes that it's all a dream, kind of like finding yourself in the same room with Mick Jagger and Billy Crystal having burritos and milkshakes watching Sleepaway Camp, Absalom the Caterpillar asserts that she's destined to slay the Jabberwocky and bring the tyranny of the Red Queen to an end. And well, that's what Alice seeks to do. And with help from the Mad Hatter, she goes out of her way to stop the Red Queen and allow the White Queen to rule once more. Yeah, that's pretty much the plot. It's essentially a reimagining of Lewis Carroll's works with a Tim Burton flair to it. Nothing more, nothing less. You could say this loses the oomph of the classic story, but I don't mind. It does have a sense of style and sense of character that I like, so it is interesting for what it's worth. Now, let's see how this version of the tale got made. Here's a quote regarding the film, which comes from screenwriter Linda Wolverton, whose work previously included Beauty and the Beast, Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey, and Lion King. This is what she said when conceiving the idea. I wrote this at a very dark time in my life. A lot of bad things had happened. Death, divorce, moving across the country, so I was kind of down the rabbit hole myself at the time. I got an image of her, Alice, standing at a very crucial moment in her life, looking over and seeing this rabbit leaning against the tree, looking at her, knowing she had to put a pin in this crucial decision and follow this rabbit, because that was her destiny. With this in mind, the film began production in 2006, when Joe Roth, a man who's produced some projects like Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, The Final Terror, Young Guns, The Three Musketeers, Heavyweights, While You Were Sleeping, F9, and Hustle, executive produced films like Bachelor Party, Dead Ringers, Enemies: A Love Story, and The Exorcist 3, and was chairman of 20th Century Fox from 1989 to 1993, co-founded Morgan Creek Entertainment with James G. Robinson, and was a chairman for Walt Disney Studios from 1994 to 2000. Jennifer and Suzanne Todd. Jennifer produced the Austin Powers films, Idle Hands, Boiler Room, Memento, The Way Back, Come From Away, and The Thursday Murder Club, while Suzanne produced Ricochet, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, and the aforementioned Austin Powers films, Idle Hands, Boiler Room, and Memento, approached Wolverton for potential ideas for a large-scale fantasy flick. She proposed of a grown-up Alice from Lewis Carroll's classic story and its sequel, Through the Looking Glass, returning to Wonderland, which, as you can tell, Wolverton had been thinking up for a while. Roth then pitched the idea to Disney, who gave the project the go-ahead, with Wolverton being assigned to write the script, with the starting draft titled Atlas being completed on February 23, 2007, soon being sent to Tim Burton, who decided to go forward with the project. According to then Walt Disney Studios president of production, Oren Aviv, Burton was the only man perfect as the choice for the film's director due to his unique vision that would bring the story to life in a way only he can. In April of 2007, it was revealed that the film would be a mixture of live action and motion capture, and by November of that year, Burton not only signed on to do Alice in Wonderland, but also a remake of his 1984 short film, Frankenweenie, which would arrive in 2012. Burton didn't have the most uniform connection with the original book, but he did develop the story in a way he felt was enticing for the audience, keeping the nature of Alice's adventures in Wonderland while adding in some psychological elements and something that made it feel fresh, describing prior versions like this. It was always a girl wandering around from one crazy character to another, and I never really felt any real emotional connection. The goal for Burton was to make the story sort of grounded in emotions, and to have it flow like a story rather than just a bunch of random events happening spontaneously, and with the Jabberwocky poem, he made it part of the structure, and refers to it by the name of the poem rather than the name used in the poem, which is just called Jabberwock, because I guess Lewis Carroll wanted to be boring about it. Burton has said that his version really isn't a reimagining, nor does he even call it a sequel. In fact, he doesn't even call it at all, meaning it's rather lonely when it's out getting a Jack in the Box at 3 in the morning. And now let's go to the casting. For the casting, Tim Burton wanted an unknown for the part of Alice, which Disney was supportive of, with the director wanting an actress that had emotional strength and could hold her own as an older person with the mentality of someone younger. Burton originally offered the role to Frances Bean Cobain, but she declined because she was busy with college, which also led to her turning down the role of Bella Swan in Twilight. The last of which was a smart move on her part because nobody wants to be known for that unless you want everyone laughing at you. In February 2008, Lindsay Lohan expressed interest in portraying Alice. Actresses such as Jennifer Lawrence, Cara Delevingne, and Jessica Brown Findlay later on revealed that they auditioned for the title role, with Brown Findlay being considered a finalist of the three, and Dakota Blue Richards had intended to audition as well, but she was deemed much younger than needed for the role. And considering some scenes see Alice losing her clothes, it was a good call because nobody wants to be on the same list as John Kricfalusi. Eventually, in July 2008, Mia Wasikowska was cast, having sent an audition tape back in February and eventually coming over to the UK and doing 4 more auditions before Burton told her that she was hired. Burton chose her because he felt there was something about Wasikowska he liked, which he described as not flamboyant, not very showy, but just somebody that's got a lot of internal life to her. A few days after Wasikowska's casting, Johnny Depp was said to be signed on for the Mad Hatter, which was soon confirmed in September 2008, which made Alice in Wonderland the 7th of Depp and Burton's collaborations, because the former is to the latter what actors like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio are to Martin Scorsese. Later that month, Matt Lucas announced on BBC's Friday Night with Jonathan Ross that he was to play Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and a few days after the fact, Michael Sheen had been cast in a role that went undisclosed, later being revealed to have been cast as the White Rabbit, with other actors like Tim Pickett-Smith, Geraldine James, and Francis de la Tour were confirmed to have been cast in then unnamed roles. By October 2008, Helena Bonham Carter and Anne Hathaway were cast as the Red and White Queens respectively, and much like with Depp, Bonham Carter had collaborated with Burton on 5 films up to that point, starting with Burton's version of Planet of the Apes, on top of being the director's first choice for the Red Queen, having produced some early sketches with Bonham Carter in mind for the character. Bonham Carter recalled at one point being brought over to his office for a meeting where she presumed Burton would propose to her, as at the time they were in a relationship, only for him to show her sketches and offer her the role, which sure feels like a tease, and perhaps explains why in 2014 they eventually ended their relationship. Meanwhile, prior to Burton being placed in the director's chair, Anne Hathaway was approached by Disney to play Alice, having previously worked on The Princess Diaries for them, but she rejected the role, being more interested in playing the White Queen. And as soon as Burton was the director, he had considered a different actress for the White Queen. But when said actress was unavailable because scheduling conflicts are a bitch, Hathaway was given the role by suggestion of the studio. Later in October, Crispin Glover was assigned to the role of the Knave of Hearts, Alan Rickman was to be the Blue Caterpillar, Eleanor Tomlinson was said to be playing Fiona Shadoway, and Christopher Lee was cast in a role that went undisclosed, later being revealed as the Jabberwocky. Now then, let's see where the movie was filmed. In terms of the filming, principal photography was intended to start in May of 2008, but didn't start until September, reaching completion in December, with scenes in the Victorian era being shot at Tor Point in Plymouth from September 1st to October 14th. 250 locals were selected as extras in early August, and locations included Anthony House in Tor Point, Charlestown in Cornwall, and the Barbican. None of the footage filmed at the Barbican was used in the final cut. In early October, motion capture filming commenced at Sony Picture Studios in Culver City, California, although this would soon be discarded, and additional filming was performed at Culver Studios in Culver City, where pretty much everything you can think of was filmed here, including The Matrix. Tim Burton claimed that rather than use motion capture, he used a blend of live action and animation, noting how this was the first time he had used a green screen for filming, for which 90% of the film was done with green screens, being done after 40 days, and staring at the green screen probably made the crew want to barf, with Burton actually having lavender lenses fitted into his glasses so that he wouldn't end up finding a vomit bag. Because of the effects of having the actors appear distorted in terms of their physical appearance, such as with the Red Queen's head or Alice's height, visual effects supervisor Ken Ralston, who needs no introduction, having worked on Star Wars and Back to the Future, cited the film as tiring, as he said it was, in his words, the biggest show I've ever done and the most creatively involved I've ever been. The last stretch of information to cite here is that Sony Pictures Imageworks, who's done so much it's too much to count, but in terms of stuff I've covered for the show, they worked on Castaway and both The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. They designed the effects, and Burton felt that 3D was important in terms of the environment for the story. Burton and producer Richard D. Zanuck, who played an instrumental part in getting Steven Spielberg's career started, producing The Sugarland Express and Jaws, and producing films for Burton like Planet of the Apes, Big Fish, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, and Dark Shadows, which was the final film that was released during his lifetime, as Zanuck died 2 months after that film's release. Chose to use normal cameras for filming and converting it into 3D. Zanuck reasoned by stating that they were cumbersome and expensive to use, and thought that no one could tell the difference between the converted format and anything shot in 3D. But this gained criticism from James Cameron, who released Avatar months before Alice in Wonderland and was shot in 3D, and said it doesn't make any sense to shoot in 2D and convert to 3D. I haven't seen the film in 3D, but given that the worst movie of 2010, The Last Airbender, was shot in 2D and converted to 3D, I think it could have been worse. Now then, let's get to the part where I give my thoughts on the film. Alice in Wonderland is a film that I really had no interest in for the longest time, and this is going back 15 years. I focused on other films from Tim Burton, and really didn't need to see this film, compared to, say, Edward Scissorhands or Batman Returns, both of which are some of my favorite films. But, thanks to a friend, the idea of reviewing the film came into my head, and upon acquiring the Blu-ray DVD combo pack with Ace at a convention, I pretty much knew what was coming next in terms of things that I would like to cover. Now, I'm not going to sit here and compare this adaptation to the book or to any other adaptations of the story, as the only one I could compare it to is the animated Disney film, meaning I'm not going to compare this to the 1985 TV version, the 1972 film, Jan Schwankmayer's 1988 film Alice, or even the adult version from 1976. I'm just going to look at this film on its own as someone going into this with the intention of giving an opinion and seeing this really for the first time.
I can't watch.
So, with this in mind, this version's pretty good. And I'm impressed I actually came out of it with a somewhat positive response. Now, this isn't quite the film that Tim Burton adapting Alice in Wonderland could have been. Mostly because I wonder how it would have worked using less CGI and more people in costumes, puppets, stop motion, practical makeup effects, animatronics, etc. Basically, it was made in the late 80s to early 90s. But I mean, I had a good time with it. And that's the important thing. Isn't that right, Mr. Lopin? Indeed! I'll start with the visuals. Because yeah, there is a lot of CGI. And while there are some effects that look off and can seem creepy at times, can't say it's too bad. And some look pretty good in some cases. It's creative, and it feels like Tim Burton made this film, with some environments looking impressive, and the character designs are very nice, like with the Red Queen and her giant head, indicative of her ego and abuse of power, something also amplified by some quality makeup effects. It's not too shabby, plus, I mean, when you have the involvement of Ken Ralston, you're probably going to get some quality visuals, especially with the involvement of Sony Pictures Imageworks. Just ask Robert Zemeckis. He worked with both for a good chunk of his career. Next, I'll discuss the cinematography, because it's also pretty good in a lot of scenes. There's plenty of well-placed shots, and they capture the environments and settings in the film pretty well, as well as the effects, and feels indicative of the Burton-esque look he's known for. It was shot by Dariusz Wolski, who helped film The Crow, Crimson Tide, Dark City, the first 4 Pirates of the Caribbean films, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, Prometheus, The Martian, The Walk, Alien Covenant, All the Money in the World, Sicario, Day of the Soldado, News of the World, The Last Duel, House of Gucci, and Napoleon. So you can tell this is quality cinematography. And it's not just because The Crow is one of my favorite films of all time, although that probably helps. As for the performances, I'll start with Mia Wasikowska as Alice, the titular heroine of the story, yet surprisingly the least credited, but I'll get to that later. Wasikowska is actually quite good as Alice, conveying the bewildered nature of the character rather well in Wonderland. And you get the idea that Alice is overwhelmed by a lot of things in her life, what with the death of her father and being proposed marriage by someone who probably got rejected by another woman because he was too snobby even for her. She fits the bill of the unconventional hero, and Wasikowska certainly is compelling as Alice. As while I do wonder how Jennifer Lawrence would have fared as the character, Wasikowska does her finest and does it well, growing a lot throughout and eventually beginning to form her own path rather than what others want of her. Plus, she even reread Lewis Carroll's stories to prepare for the role, and even watched Jan Schwackmeyer's Alice, so that's one thing to really note about that. Next we have Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter, the most publicized and mass-marketed part of the film. He's also pretty good here, complete with quality makeup and costume design made to fit his emotions, same with his accent and personality, because Depp really gets into his parts. He's charismatic, yet has the madness to him that makes him the Mad Hatter, all while having human elements and a sense of humor only matched by Depp's expressive face. Again, I sort of wonder what either Michael Keaton or the late Paul Rubens would have been cast if this was made in the late 80s, early 90s, but Depp more than becomes the Hatter, and he really does look like he's having a good time here. Then we have Helena Bonham Carter as Elizabeth, or as she's better known as, the Red Queen. Much like Depp, she looks like she's having a ball in the film. She's everything the Red Queen is. Over the top, egotistical, ruthless, and while a little sympathetic, is overall insane. And Bonham Carter sells it with gusto, proving to be a memorable bad guy similar to the animated film. Plus, with that giant head, she basically has the opposite fate of Harry the Hunter from Beetlejuice. Other good performances include Anne Hathaway as Mirana, also known as the White Queen, who makes the most of her minimal screen time. You have to admire Crispin Glover as Ilosophic Stain, aka the Knave of Hearts, and Matt Lucas is quite memorable as Tweedledee and Tweedledum, even if it's because the effects look a little uncanny, and that's only the actors on screen. For the voice cast, you've got Michael Sheen as the White Rabbit, real name Nivens McTwisp, fitting for a character who would seem imaginary. Sheen certainly had an interesting year, between doing this and Tron Legacy, so Disney had him plenty busy in 2010, and certainly makes his presence clear as the White Rabbit, as much like with the classic tale, he leads Alice down the rabbit hole. He's quite good, and not in the unintentionally humorous section like what happens 2 years later. I mean in the sense that it works within the context of the film, as Sheen makes the most of this neurotic rabbit. And really, without the White Rabbit, it ain't Wonderland now, is it? And now we come to the best performance, Alan Rickman as Absalom the Caterpillar, who, as usual, smokes from his hookah, only he is less of an ass about it compared to the animated film. He's more or less the one that tells Alice why she's here, but Rickman more than sells it here as this stoner caterpillar, because really, Rickman sold every film he was in, whether it's Hans Gruber in Die Hard or Severus Snape in the Harry Potter films. Of which, Deathly Hallows Part 1 came out the same year as Alice in Wonderland, so you could tell he had a busy 2010. Rickman really is in his element here, and it's a shame to think that he passed away 9 years ago. He was one of the best. You've also got Stephen Fry as the Cheshire Cat, originally meant to be played by Michael Sheen, but changed to the White Rabbit due to scheduling conflicts, but nevertheless is perfect casting. Barbara Windsor as Malimkoon, the Dormouse, who also gives a great performance. with Tim Burton casting her because of her work on the TV series EastEnders, Timothy Spall as Bayard Amar, the Bloodhound, an original character likely inspired by the puppy from the book, also good performance. Paul Whitehouse as Thackeray Earwicket, who is the March Hare, and looks like he got sober and has drunken a lot of coffee to combat his drug problem, and delivers some rather funny lines. Michael Goff makes the most of his final performance as William the Dodo, delivering a classy 3 lines. Fellow Hammer alumni Christopher Lee delivers a delicious 2 lines as the Jabberwocky, and Frank Welker even supplies some vocal effects and additional voices. So yeah, you've got a hell of a cast. So much so I can't even go over exactly all of them, but trust me, it's a lot. Finally, we come to the music. Once again, performed by Burton's finest collaborator, Danny Elfman. And as you can tell, it's excellent, and is the best part of the film. It fits every scene in the film, and has that nice blend of orchestral, classical, and pop music, rather than just, let's go for the period piece angle, because Elfman is more impressive than that. This is a guy who was a part of Oingo Boingo after all. It feels appropriate within the context of the plot, and considering there's elements from other composers here, namely Bernard Herrmann, it makes for a phenomenal listen, and really makes you feel like you've come to a different world beyond your wildest dreams. I could also talk about Alice by Avril Lavigne, but then things would get complicated, and that definitely won't get me a girlfriend, and I'll be sad when you're gone because y'all are the best damn thing. Skater Boy. Bad puns aside, the music is quite good, especially Elfman's score. Quality stuff in my opinion. Overall, I like Alice in Wonderland. It's not perfect, but I like it. Not bad at all. The movie certainly had plenty of promotion, including a special nighttime event at Disney's California Adventure, known as Mad Tea Party, albeit that was done in 2012 before being shut down in 2016, and a video game released for the Wii, Nintendo DS, and PC, among many other promotional accessories and whatnot. Alice in Wonderland had its premiere on February 25th, 2010 at the Odeon Leicester Square in London for the Prince's Foundation for Children and the Arts, attended by the Prince, now King, of Wales, and the Duchess, now Queen, of Cornwall, before getting a wider release on March 5th, where on a budget of between $150 to $200 million, it grossed $1.25 billion, and it became the second highest grossing film of the year, just behind the most anticipated Disney film, Toy Story 3, because, well, Alice in Wonderland is okay, but Toy Story 3 is amazing, and still holds up 15 years later. Critically, the film got mixed reviews, most likely because they felt the story wasn't up to snuff to their expectations, but thought it was visually impressive, if I had to guess. It did get some Oscar nominations, winning for Best Art Direction and Best Costume Design, and losing Best Visual Effects to Inception, because much like Toy Story 3, Inception is superb, and still holds up even now. The film soon set the stage for future live-action adaptations of Disney's animated classics, with a majority of them having varying degrees of quality, and eventually received a sequel in 2016 with Alice Through the Looking Glass, which did not recapture the financial success of the first and got worse reviews. Overall, it did pretty well for what it's worth. And at least it wasn't a far more agonizing live-action adaptation of a classic animated production.
Christ, did a cow shit in here?
And that is Alice in Wonderland in a nutshell for you. It's a decent enough movie, and if you are interested, I say give it a watch. It's available on DVD, it's available on Blu-ray, and for what it's worth, I enjoyed my time with it, and who knows, maybe you will too. Yeah, it's not quite what Tim Burton adapting Alice in Wonderland could have been, but, I mean, the scenery is there, the effects are decent enough, it's good, it's got some good performances, Danny Elfman's score is top-notch, so overall, it's watchable, it's fun, you know, you can get some enjoyment out of it. It's definitely a film that may not be as good as some of either Tim Burton's other works or any of the other works from Johnny Depp, but, I mean, could be worse. So yeah, this has been my review for Alice in Wonderland, 2010. Hope you enjoyed it, found it entertaining, educational, and who knows, maybe it made you want to seek out this movie. I mean, something like that existing 15 years ago is crazy to me. But time really does move fast, and it slows down for nobody. So, with that, I will catch you later. I'll see you next time, where we'll be getting to some spooky shenanigans. I'll see you in October, ladies and gentlemen.